You've seen the clip. A truck the length of a city block, dust plume visible from a satellite. 4 trailers stretched out behind a single cab on some empty highway in the middle of Australia. And the first thing your brain probably did was judge it. That looks reckless. That looks gimmicky. That looks like a country showing off. So why does Australia let a 53.5-meter vehicle on a public road when nothing remotely like it is legal where you live? What's actually happening inside that thing? And how does one driver in one cab control 200 tons of moving steel? The answer isn't excess. It's the only way an entire continent stays fed, fueled, and connected. But the real reason goes deeper than distance. A road train isn't a long truck. It's a chain of completely independent semi-trailers held together by a piece of engineering you've never heard of, doing math that physically cannot work without it. The system you're watching is touching something you ate this week, drove past, or unwrapped without thinking about it. And it traces back to a 1947 battlefield recovery vehicle, a bush mechanic from the Northern Territory, and a child's toy made out of tin lids. But let's start with what everyone gets wrong about why these even exist. The obvious answer is the wrong one. Australia is huge, so the trucks got huge. That is only half right, because Australia had another option. Until 1976, the Northern Territory had a railway. The North Australia Railway connected Darwin southward, and Commonwealth Railways ran a coordinated road and rail freight service through Alice Springs and Larrimah for decades. There was infrastructure. There was a rail option, and the railway lost. Not to a budget cut, not to a political decision, to a truck. By the mid-1970s, the road train was beating the train on cost per ton mile so consistently that the rail line could not justify staying open. An entire railway was outcompeted by a vehicle. But that's not even where the story starts. Before the modern road train existed, the outback supply system ran on camels. Afghan and Pakistani cameleers had been hauling freight across central Australia since the late 1800s, charging 2 shillings 6 per ton per mile. Then in the 1930s, the South Australian government rolled out the government road train, an AEC 8x8 military truck, pulling 2 or 3 Dyson self-tracking trailers. It moved freight at 6.5 pence per ton per mile, a 78% cost reduction almost overnight. An entire profession of cameleers, generations of expertise, were economically wiped out by a 130 horsepower military truck with an open cab, where drivers literally froze in winter and sweltered in summer because the radiator sat behind their seats with a 5-foot cooling fan blowing engine heat onto their backs. That's not romantic engineering. That's brutal economics. And it's the math that built the road train industry. Therefore, communities like Borroloola, Wave Hill, the Victoria River District, places hundreds of kilometers from anything, became completely dependent on this exact vehicle class. If road trains stop running for a week, the fuel runs dry, the medicine does not arrive, and the lights go out across an area larger than France. The system is not a convenience. It is a life support line. But scale alone does not explain why these things are exactly 53.5 meters long, because the truck doing this is not actually one truck. It is a chain held together by something called a converter dolly. Here's where the inside of a road train stops being a metaphor and starts being a problem in mechanical engineering. A road train is a chain of independent semi-trailers, each designed to be towed by its own truck, except they are towed by each other. The piece of equipment that makes that possible is called a converter dolly, a short, unpowered axle assembly with a 5th wheel kingpin at the front and a turntable plate at the rear. Look at it parked alone, and it looks like nothing, just a couple of tires and a frame on legs. But its job is to take a regular semi-trailer's kingpin connection and turn it into a 5th wheel that the next trailer can hook to. Without dollies, you cannot chain semi-trailers. The kingpin geometry physically forbids it. Therefore, the dolly is the brain of the chain. Every trailer behind the first is hanging off a dolly, doing the math. Then there's the tracking. Kurt Johansson's original 1947 design had self-tracking trailers. Both wheel sets on each trailer could steer, so the back of the rig could follow narrow tracks and creek crossings without taking corners wider than the cab. That principle is still in modern road trains. Without it, a 53.5-meter vehicle could not navigate any road that was not a perfect straight line. Stack the forces involved. Modern prime movers run 500 to 700 horsepower. Drawbar pull forces approach 200 kilonewtons, about 20 tons, when accelerating with a full load up a grade. It is a small house worth of steel pulling on the back of the cab through a single hitch point. Every second the truck is in motion. But here's the part nobody talks about. A road train cannot reverse. Not really. Multiple articulation points, kingpin, drawbar, dolly turntable, kingpin again, make backing up more than a few meters geometrically nightmarish. In practice, drivers are trained not to. A wrong turn means uncoupling the entire chain, repositioning the prime mover, and recoupling each trailer one at a time. Hours of work, because of geometry. So when you see a road train pulled up at an outback fuel stop, that driver is not just stopping. That driver is solving a moving math problem with a 200-ton pencil. And the same dolly principle shows up in something sitting in your kitchen right now. But we'll come back to that. This configuration did not appear out of nowhere. It came from a single bush mechanic, a battlefield recovery vehicle, and a child's toy. The story does not start with engineers in a boardroom. It starts with a kid in the desert. Kurt Johansson was born in 1915 at Deepwell Station, about 80 kilometers south of Alice Springs. By age 11, he had a driver's license. By age 15, he owned his own truck and had won the government contract for sanitary services in his town. He was working full-time as a child of the Red Center. But the part of his life that mattered for road trains had already happened. Johansson later wrote that the idea for self-tracking multi-trailer rigs came to him at age 10. He was a kid making toys out of tin lids and kerosene boxes, hooking them together with wire tow bars looped around bent nails, pulling them through the dirt. 2 trailers, 3, sometimes 4. He was prototyping the road train in the dust before he could legally drive. Therefore, after World War II, when a station owner challenged him to haul 100 head of cattle 320 kilometers, 5 times what any truck could carry, Johansson was not starting from zero. He was finishing a design he had been working on for almost 2 decades. He bought a U.S. Army Diamond T tank carrier from war surplus for about 2,000 pounds. The Diamond T was a battlefield recovery vehicle designed to drag damaged tanks off battlefields. He named it Bertha. Then he built 3 13-meter self-tracking trailers. Total length, 54 meters. The first commercial road train in the world. Bertha is still preserved at the National Road Transport Hall of Fame in Alice Springs. The tank recovery vehicle that became a cattle truck that became the prototype for an entire industry. The modern road train is a direct descendant of one Bush mechanic's tin lid models and a battlefield tank carrier. Not a metaphor, a documented genealogy. This is the part that should change how you see the truck in that clip. The road train is not an Australian curiosity. It is an industrial substrate touching global supply chains in ways most people have never traced. Iron ore from the Pilbara, one of the largest iron ore producing regions on Earth, moves partly by road train on private mining roads, where the 53.5-meter cap does not apply, and configurations approaching 200 tons become normal. That ore becomes Chinese steel, becomes the steel in your car, your washing machine, your phone's chassis, the rebar in the building you are sitting in. The road train carried it first. Cattle transported by road train from the Northern Territory and Queensland to live export ports at Wyndham, Darwin, Port Hedland, and Broome are shipped to Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Middle East. The beef in Asian restaurants across half the planet ran on a road train before it ran on a ship. Every liter of diesel arriving at remote mining camps is delivered by road train. Every box of medicine in a Borroloola pharmacy is delivered by road train. In 1999, a single Kenworth K100G at Merredin, Western Australia, pulled 45 trailers totaling 603 tons for 8 kilometers. 610 meters of articulated steel behind one engine, one driver, Greg Marley of Marley's Transport. It set the Guinness World Record for the longest road train, one driver. And the same logic, chain trailers, a single prime mover, a scale-driven collapse in cost, is the reason every grocery shelf you have ever stood in front of is shaped the way it is. Container shipping, long-haul rail freight, even Amazon's hub and spoke model, they all run on the same equation Johansen proved with Bertha in 1947. So here's where you actually land. You pulled up that clip thinking you were looking at engineering excess, a country with too much empty space and not enough rules. But what you were actually looking at was a 1907 French Renard patent that almost worked. A 1930s government experiment that wiped out an entire profession of cameleers. A 1947 U.S. Army surplus tank recovery vehicle named Bertha. A converter dolly doing geometry. No semi-trailer can do alone. A self-tracking trailer principle a 10-year-old boy invented out of tin lids in the Northern Territory desert. And a 53.5-meter answer to a question no other country has had to fully answer. How do you keep an entire continent alive when the railway does not reach? That sound you used to think was Australian excess. That is the hum of the only logistics system that makes Australia possible. You are not just looking at a truck. You are looking at the longest, heaviest, most economically essential vehicle class on the planet, doing a job nothing else has ever managed to take from it. And if you think road trains are extreme, wait until we get into the trucks too heavy for any public road. The 400-ton mining haulers working on private mountain spirals, nobody else is allowed to drive on, where the driver has to climb a ladder just to reach the cab.